What it do, y'all? In the heart of the sea, hold on one second. Based on the 1820 event, a whaling ship is preyed upon by a giant whale, standing its crew at sea for 90 days, thousands of miles from home. Now, I read that off my phone because this movie has no clear plot and it doesn't know what it wants to be. Half of it wants to be this gripping sea thriller about a whale. It's about the story that Moby Dick is based on, not the other way around, which is weird for me. And then, on the other hand, it wants to be this existential man versus nature story, and it wants to be both of them so badly that it never actually winds up being either. And so I had to read it off my phone because I'm not really sure how to describe this film, and I wanted to give you guys the best possible description. First, the pros. There are a few core performances here that do bring a bit of humanity, mainly that of Chris Hemsworth, Cillian Murphy, and Tom Holland. Those three were incredible at utilizing a screenplay that doesn't really offer much opportunity for humanity, but they inserted and interjected their own in a way that I found very nice. Chris Hemsworth is a very charismatic lead. He plays the first mate here, and he's this cliche version of a first mate. He knows everything, he's smarter than the captain, the crew likes him more than the captain, he's more active than the captain, he should be the captain, but he's not the captain because, I forget, I think I slept through that part. But there's a reason, I think. And an honorable mention goes to Benjamin Walker's performance. Benjamin Walker, many might know him from his role in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Shout out to you, David. He plays the ship's captain, and for the first 2 acts of the film, I would say, he's not really an interesting character, but in the final act, he brings the very same humanity that Hemsworth, Holland, and Murphy had been bringing to the film the whole time. I think I just slurred all my words. I think the ending being where he shows up most is partially due to the fact that his character undergoes a huge shift, and that made him more interesting and ultimately more likable, and I cared more about his character. Secondly, Ron Howard, as a director, is a very visual person. He directed Beautiful Mind and Apollo 13, and he directs the wide shots here very beautifully. The other parts of his direction are less than stellar, but more on that later. But the wide shots, when you see outside of the ship, when you see the whale in contrast to the ship, all that's beautiful. It's well shot, and that was by far my favorite aspect of the film, is the wide shots. When you see those, you're like, oh, that's a beautiful picture. I didn't do this in the theater, but I'm doing it now. And that's pretty much all I liked about the film. Now for the cons, what this film funnels down to is the fact that it's not really a blockbuster-worthy story. This is the actual real event that inspired the book Moby Dick. And it's not as interesting because Moby Dick is a fictionalized book based on real events. And the reason it's fictionalized is because this isn't interesting. And there's actually a line of dialogue at the end when a character asks Melville, the writer of Moby Dick, he asks him if everything he said is going to be used in the novel. And he replies no. He says it's a fictionalized book and it's going to be based around the core premise and the core themes that were involved in the real life story, but ultimately he's going to kind of spruce it up. Spruce it up with his writing. He's going to add more layers and more entertainment to the book, and that's really why this didn't need a blockbuster movie. Moby Dick does need a blockbuster film because it's worthy of that. It's this demon whale who just takes out a boat and he kind of attacks his captain and the captain becomes obsessed with him. That's interesting. That's something I would like to see in a blockbuster directed by Ron Howard in this visual style. Maybe not the close-ups. It's no good. But that's something I'd like to see. Not this. This is a very kind of subdued story. This is very one-layered. This is just a simple story that could have been told in a way that Robert Redford's previous film, the one where he's All Is Lost. All Is Lost is the kind of format I would expect this story to be told. Kind of very indie, subdued. And I'm not knocking the fact that this film got a big budget. I'm knocking the fact that it was poorly executed because it's trying to be this blockbuster and using a story not deserving of such. And like I said, Ron Howard is a very stylistic director. And so here he sacrifices style for substance, which is odd because this is a story that has so much substance behind it. True stories always have substance. And yet Ron Howard found a way to eliminate all that. And he got rid of both the style and the substance here, which is out of character for him. Like, for example, the up-close shots, they look so cramped, and that's because this was shot for IMAX. And I think they meant to go post-conversion 3D or something. I may be wrong about that, don't quote me. But the close-ups look so tight and cramped, and everything is just inside the frame. It's kind of like one of my videos. Woo! But it became so distracting because Ron Howard was so distracted by what he can put in the frame that he was never really focusing on the context of the frame or what it was meant to do. And the shot composition is all over the place here, which is partially due to the cinematography. You can't solely blame Howard, but the fact of the matter is that it looked bad, and it's due to poor set design, poor costume design, poor cinematography, and poor direction. That's the core elements that led to such a cramped and kind of grimy looking aesthetic to this film. Like I said, the wide shots are tremendous, and you can't go wrong with a good Ron Howard wide shot. Now, I said in my review that fatigue leads to diminishing interest, or diminishing intrigue, and what that means is that eventually the film gets so tiring that even the scenes that should be interesting aren't. Like, there's an arc at the end where they find, because they're rafted and then blah blah, I'm not trying to spoil the film, but there's a part where they end up on a raft floating towards an island, and it should be interesting, but it's not. It feels like, this movie feels in many ways like the film Unbroken, and which is directed by Angelina Jolie, again, style over substance. But the thing there is that it spent a lot of time on a raft when it could have been spending precious screen time elsewhere. And it didn't, and that's kind of why this film is as bad as it is, because it spends so much time on this raft and you're not interested when it's there. It's not an interesting event, but so much time is spent on this damn raft. And on top of that waste of screen time, you have another waste of screen time. You have the wraparound story, as I like to call it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I probably didn't come up with that, but I like to pretend that I did. You got Melville, the writer of Moby Dick, kind of interviewing the kid character played by Tom Holland. I think it's Thomas Nickerson or something like that. But you have this interview with him. It's interlaced with the actual story that you came to see, and that's kind of annoying. Like, I'm trying to watch a movie here, and then you gotta come and you gotta show me that this is based on a book. It felt like it was the filmmaker's way of kind of spoon-feeding you the fact that this isn't based on Moby Dick, but instead Moby Dick is based on this. Like, I could have gotten that in one frame at the very beginning or the very end. Just show like a title card, and this is the true story that Moby Dick is based on. Boom, done. It's bizarre because it added nothing to the story, and in the end, like, they tried to wrap it up, and I was like, what? You already wrapped up the actual core story. I don't care. I can just leave. And I wanted to. I wanted to just leave because that's not something I was interested in. I didn't come to see Melville talk to Nickerson about his life. I came to see Nickerson's life. Ultimately, this movie just frustrated me. It was disappointing. I was actually very excited for this because it's a Ron Howard film. I liked Ron Howard's previous film with Chris Hemsworth. What was it? One of the race cars. They did something. I'm not going to remember the name. I'm going to put the poster right here. Okay. Whatever movie that was. I liked that film. It's a moderately decent film, and it had a good aesthetic, but I feel like Ron Howard's on the downward spiral, and this film is probably a really pretty low point for him, at least in my opinion. This is a bit of his downward spiral. Yeah, this film was very disappointing, and it should have been better than it is. It's one of those disappointing films because it's so close to being great, but it's not. And so ultimately, I'm going to have to give this film a 4 out of 10. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Please subscribe so you can get all my movie reviews, my trailer reviews, and like the video because I feel like there's no reason to like videos, but you should do it because it makes the creator feel better about himself. Also, comment down below. Tell me what you thought of the film. If you liked it, then awesome. Awesome. That would be... I'd be really interested to hear why you liked it and what you found to be A-okay, because I found very little. But, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Have a good day. I just fade here. What do I do? What do you mean? 'Cause you wanna go to the left and you wanna turn right.